All right, we have simply massive news for Starbucks out. And I know a lot of times it's hyperbole when you go on YouTube or read a headline somewhere and you see massive news for a company. But I'm telling you right now, getting Brian Niccol from Chipotle is a big, big deal for Starbucks. I'm Jason Hall. This is Investing Unscripted. We're going to break down what Brian Niccol is bringing to Starbucks and whether or not I think this makes Starbucks a buy, even with the stock up some 20 something percent just in the past few hours since word came out that Brian Niccol is going to be taking over as CEO. Before we break down what's going on with Starbucks and Brian Niccol's background and why he looks like the perfect fit for the CEO seat at Starbucks, this video is sponsored by The Motley Fool. If you're looking for even more great stock ideas, you really need to check out our special link. You see it right there on the screen. It's fool.com/unscripted. Again, fool.com/unscripted. Go to that special link and you can get access to the Motley Fool's 10 best stocks to buy right now. If you really want to upskill yourself as an investor, go check out that link. Let's start here just because, man, that visual looks good. 23% gains so far. I'm recording this about an hour after the market opened today. Definitely a market that's super happy with what Starbucks has decided to do. I'm going to pull up a chart here and go back a little bit farther here. We're going to go back to September of 2022. Now Lakshman Narishman, who is the outgoing CEO at Starbucks, effective immediately. I mean, he's been just shoved out the door. He took over in March of 2023, but it was really September of 2022 when it was announced that he was going to be replacing Howard Schultz as the CEO of the company. He served for a few months kind of as an understudy before he came in. And as you see, the market liked it initially. Stock ran up, but the results just weren't there. You see, just about every time the company reported earnings since he was named and took over as CEO, the stock has come down. Fell when it reported its full year results for 2022, first quarter, second quarter, Q3 jump, but again, generally negative results. And definitely the quarters and the results that have been announced so far this year have not met expectations. There have been a lot of calls for change. And well, we got that change. I think one thing I want to say here before we really dig into the details about Niccol is it is a little bit surprising the timing because we did see the company come out with under its prior CEO, who's now prior CEO, with a pretty detailed plan to get the business back heading towards growth, profitability improvements, and just that quickly, it's pretty clear that the board and obviously some pretty major investors did not like the plan. And then the opportunity to get somebody like Brian Niccol, I think, cemented the case for its time to move on. Okay, so who is Brian Niccol? If you don't follow Chipotle, you might not know much about his background. Even if you do know Chipotle and you followed Brian Niccol, follow the company under his leadership, let's go back to the beginning when he was brought in to Chipotle. This was right after the company had gone through and was still kind of in the midst of trying to find itself, coming through the foodborne illness, the E. coli foodborne illness in the West Coast was pretty bad. I think a few people might have actually died. Hundreds and hundreds of people got sick. And then in the Northeast, norovirus spread through some of those stores because of sick employee, at least one sick employee who had norovirus. And then in the Southeast, a few months after that, we saw another case of some people getting sick. Long story short, ended up resulting in one of the founders of the business being pushed out and Brian Niccol being brought in. So Brian Niccol's background before that, he ran Taco Bell. So the idea when he was brought in, kind of the public image, the expectation was that Brian Niccol was this innovative guy. I mean, the Taco Bell's success was so much related to like stuff like tacos that were made out of Doritos, right? Just the idea of these kind of whimsical foods. And people thought he was going to bring like a lot of innovation to the food side of Chipotle. And that's happened to a certain extent. We've seen things like Sofritas, which is their vegan protein offering, which I'll tell you, I'm a meat eater, but I love the Sofritas. Is actually my go-to protein from Chipotle. We've seen that. They've tested other things. They've had some success and some that weren't. But really, Brian Niccol's stamp on Chipotle has really been operational efficiency and improvements. This is a guy that came in and helped them get their processes in line, doing things like better job with quality control, being able to track ingredients. One of the things Chipotle does is they try to source things as close to their stores as they can, buying local, natural, organic when they can. When you have all of these different suppliers, it can be harder to track everything. And so they've done a really good job of putting those processes in place. Things like using better technology, putting in the back a line, the make ready line that they can use like for to-go orders that's improved the experience for people coming in to get in line to order food, and also improve the experience for people that place online orders to be able to get those orders really quickly. The Chipotle lane is another thing that's made a big difference. This does not, I don't know if you can really call it an innovation, but Chipotle wasn't a drive-through place. That's changed. Something like 80% of their new restaurants are being built with drive-throughs. So all of these make-ready improvements to improve efficiency, help customers come in, get their food, place their order more quickly, get their food more quickly. All of those things he's done while also really prioritizing the things that people love about Chipotle. Food with integrity. Brian Nichols has helped the company continue to deliver more and more food while still managing to deliver high quality food and also bringing new things to the menu. And as shareholders, doing it while increasingly becoming more and more profitable. So just really delivering on all of the things. This is somebody that has completely operationally turned that business around while continuing to have a super high image with its consumers and great brand loyalty. Okay, so what's he going to bring to Chipotle, or what's he going to bring to Starbucks? In short, I think he's going to bring a combination of some of the same things. Starbucks has always been kind of innovative. They're always trying out new beverages. Some end up just being seasonal or temporary things, or they bring it back once a year. Some things end up on the menu permanently. So they've done a pretty good job of consistently innovating with the beverages that they provide, working on getting better foods, foods that are more appealing, to try and expand day parts and try and increase the size of the average check. So Starbucks has generally done a pretty good job with those things. It seems like Starbucks has lost its edge in a couple of ways. Number one, operationally, definitely some signs that we need to see improvement. We've seen upticks in the number of customers that are canceling orders, complaining about orders, or simply not picking up their orders because it took too long. All of those things have gotten worse for Starbucks. We've seen big decreases in traffic in North America and also China, which the company has touted for years is maybe its most important long-term market that it expects to be even bigger than North America and become its most profitable market over time. We've seen some big reductions in traffic in those stores, and that's an issue. So what do we expect to see from Brian Nichols? This is somebody that's going to come in from day one and is going to analyze everything. He's going to analyze everything and prioritize it and find ways to make the business run better while providing better service and better products to its customers. And that sounds really simple, and maybe it's simple, but it's not easy to do. We do know this. The CEO that is now out the door, handpicked by Howard Schultz to replace Schultz in his third tour of duty as the CEO at Starbucks, now we have somebody with a proven background that's coming in. He's proven he can do it. He did it at Taco Bell, accelerated the growth at Taco Bell, turned it into an extremely profitable business, a lot bigger than when he took it over. We saw what he did with Chipotle, turning that really struggling, directionless business around, making it massively profitable while continuing to help its customers continue to be more and more loyal, willing to spend more money, and at the same time delivering excellent customer service. We know he can do it. Now it's his chance to come into Starbucks and do the exact same thing. Obviously, the market loves it. Stock's up 20 some odd percent today. Question a lot of you have, this is what I'm going to try to answer right now. Is Starbucks still a buy after this massive jump in the stock price in a single day? I don't want to anchor too much on what the stock price has done over the past, call it 2 years, since Narasimhan was named as the replacement CEO and then officially took over that job in March of 2023. But it's something to look at, and it's important. Again, the stock, there was high expectations when he first took over and just consistent disappointment with the results. Again, some of it just macro market conditions that maybe aren't super easy to address, but also just the operating results that haven't impressed the market. Here we are today, and the stock is actually up about 10% from where it was. We add in the dividend, even better. It's up about 14%. Now, let's go a little further back. Let's just have a little bit of fun here and take a look at the stock. We go back 5 years ago. So we go back to before the pandemic. Well, Starbucks has consistently been a lagging, underperforming business. On one hand, it might make it pretty easy to say, you know what? That's not attractive. I don't want to own a lagging, underperforming business. Let's kind of unpack things a little bit more here. So the pandemic happened. It's changed a lot of things about the way people use Starbucks and work. A lot of Starbucks' locations were put close to where people's offices were because the morning and the daytime is when it does the vast majority of its business. You have a lot more people with hybrid work and working from home. So a lot of the stock prices come down with expectations just that its business is going to struggle to fully recover because of the fact that people aren't leaving the office to go grab a coffee in the early afternoon or mid morning anymore like they were in 2019 and before. I think that's a little bit overstated in terms of a risk for the business. I want to talk a little bit about China really quickly too. So the China results are down right now. I think there's a little bit of just Chinese consumers kind of pulling back a little bit in other categories as well. You have to remember the past year has kind of been the reopening for China from the pandemic, the zero COVID policy. So really over the past year, we've seen consumers go out and spend a tremendous amount of money in ways that we saw happen earlier in Western markets. And I think maybe that's a little bit of what's happening with Starbucks' results. Just consumers that might have been spending a lot more money in that first year after things opened back up that maybe just haven't been spending as much in the past few quarters. Hoping that's the case. Either way, I think Nichols is a guy that can come in and help stabilize that business, make sure they have the right strategy in place. It's important to remember, too, that there's a presidents that run the Chinese market that know that market really well. So you have to give them a little bit of responsibility for the results and not just hold the CEO responsible as well. Anyway, I think they're going to be able to get China back onto the growth trajectory. Last point, let's look past anchoring on the price, how much it's gone up or come down just in the recent period. We have to think about the labor strife that's happened in the US as well. That seems like it's stabilized a little bit. And let's just think about valuation. We know total sales have grown a lot over the past few years, even though we've seen like the same store sales levels have come down a little bit in the past few quarters. They've opened so many new locations. Total sales have grown. What that means is the potential for future profits, I think, has grown along with it because you get operating leverage over time. The margin profile the company's generated over a long time has been consistently excellent. I think Nichols is exactly the kind of guy that can get those operating margins back to the levels that we want to see and really turn Starbucks back into the full scale cash cow that it can be when it's operating at its best. But I want to use dividend yield as a little bit of a proxy for valuation. Now, here's the important thing. Kind of the first part of this, it's a 10-year chart. The first part of this, the dividend yield was very low because the dividend was still relatively new. And it's only been in the past few years where we've seen the dividend yield get to a little bit higher level. So 2.4% dividend yield at the price after this big jump in the stock, that compares to about 1.8% average yield over the past decade. Now, if you look at the past 5 years, it's still a good bit above that long-term yield average, about 2%. So about 2.4% dividend yield. Now, when the yield, if the business quality is good, I think it's a still really high quality business. The dividend's super safe. You're going to be able to grow it. Maybe with Nickel coming in, if they can grow earnings faster, they can grow the dividend even faster. The point is you have a high quality business when the dividend yield is above its average. That's usually an indication that this is a good time to be thinking about buying the stock. I really think that's the case for Starbucks. I think getting Nickel is a massive win. I think you finally have the permanent long-term replacement. We've had two great CEOs running Starbucks in its history. And now I think this is the third great CEO in Brian Niccol. And you couldn't have a better guy to come in to help get the operations lined back up, drive value for investors, keep customers happy, and drive customer loyalty at the same time. I think Starbucks is a buy right now.